And we're live. First off, welcome in to another episode of College Football Uncensored. We're back and better than ever. We are doing 2 episodes a week again, which is nice. For I don't know, at least our producer keeps him busy, which is great. We are joined by a special guest co-host, a good buddy of mine, and a rival fan, but also has his own podcast with Locked On SEC. Chris Gordy, how the hell are you, dude?
What's up, Marler? Yeah, look, I say it straight up. I went to LSU, but you'll never hear me be a home. Like I'm a homer to the SEC first. Like
Right.
I can when they play a game, I'll root for them, sure. But like if Bama wins, I can very quickly turn around and say that was an awesome Alabama win. How great were they? So
Yeah.
I'm SEC homer first. Now, don't bring some Big Ten crap in here because I'll talk trash to you.
I wouldn't.
Hey.
Actually, you say that, and I keep forgetting that we are trying to move to more of a national thing, on the podcast. No, but I do agree with you. I will say, no one on Twitter believes that out of me, but that is the case. I am not. I try not to be a homer as much as possible. Dude, we got a pretty big week. It's mostly college basketball. I know the name of the podcast is obviously College Football Uncensored, and also welcome in everybody. And the views we have, I'll just give you the rundown of what we're going to do. We're going to talk a little bit. We're going to do like a spring. I'm going to call it a reach around, just because it's uncomfortable for everyone to hear, like a whip around, which also sounds weird. It also sounds weird. But no, we're going to
everybody whip theirs out. Let's go.
We're going to sit here, just smash that like button, whip it out, smash that like button. No, I think we're going to talk a little college football. Obviously, Georgia had pro day today. We're going to talk about that. The Jalen Carter news that came out, that he is probably not going to get drafted. From what I'm hearing, he's probably going to go undrafted, which is the dumbest storyline. It's not a real storyline, obviously. We're going to talk a little bit about Mizzou. Not enough to drive everyone away, I promise. We have an awesome at 9:00. Even if you're not watching now, go get yourself a snack. Go get yourself a beer. Go get yourself one of these Alanis that have like 3,000 grams of caffeine in them, and I'm drinking them way too late. But we're going to talk with a good buddy of ours, Mike Calabrese, just one of the most Italian names I've ever heard.
Like a cheese.
Yeah. He's like a betting guru. And he works for Action Network. He does a great job. He's done a lot of stuff with us as well. And he's going to help us fill out a bracket. He's going to help us with the best bets for tomorrow, put some money in our pocket, make some money. All this weekend. So as March Madness kicks off, just right off the bat, what's the biggest news I think you've been seeing over the past week? Because we talked about Anthony Richardson, his numbers kind of coming down in a good way for him, where he could potentially be the number 1 overall pick. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there's been that conversation. Like, here's the funny thing: if you've ever watched the horrifically awful movie called Draft Day, starring Kevin Costner,
that was a good movie.
That movie's the worst film ever made because it's not realistic.
Really never seen any of those weird claymation movies at Christmas time.
And like one of the biggest problems I have with the movie is he's a GM who gives a huge haul to move up to the number 1 pick and then goes, all right, I don't know who we're going to take. And that's kind of what the Carolina Panthers have done here. Like they gave up this whole haul to go up to number 1,
right?
And turn around and went, all right, now who do we like? Like, no, that's not how this works. You don't turn up and then go, all right, now let's start looking at Bryce Young and Anthony Richardson and Will Levis. But it is funny that, like, 3 of the guys from the SEC are all like any one of those 3 could go number 1 and it wouldn't be crazy.
Will Levis going number 1 is crazy. And I know your wife's a Kentucky fan or grad or whatever. And I know that.
But look, he looks the part. Like, as a guy who's like, I've interviewed him a handful of times. He is an impressive dude. He's funny. He's charismatic.
Yeah.
He's relatable.
Attractive as hell.
See him, he's tough. He's, he's strong. He's got the arms. He's got the look. And he was throwing darts at the combine. Yeah. So it wouldn't be crazy and out of the realm. But it's just weird that the Panthers go get the number 1 pick. They're like, yeah, now we don't know who we're going to take. Like
that. Yeah. And I actually believe him. It's just the crazy thing. Because it's like, we got 43 days. And it was like, is this like a Tebow halftime speech? Like, we got 43 days for the rest of our life. I'm like, okay, cool.
Well, the funny thing will be if they go up there and they go, we draft Will Levis or Will, what's his face, out of Alabama? Like,
Bryce Young?
No, Will Anderson. Like if
Will Anderson. Okay, yeah.
They trade up and they're like, you know, we're not sold on these quarterbacks. We're gonna go Will Anderson.
Yeah. We got some of the comments coming in already. We appreciate that, guys. Make sure you guys keep them coming. We'll get into some of the UGA stuff. It's a very heavy UGA crowd. I know you already see my man right here, Ben Diesel, with the horny for disrespect. What do you call it? Profile pic, which we love. Michael Casper asking how are my hands. They've healed. They're a little bit better. I told Gordy the story. This is like, I mean, it's just so bad. It's just so bad. Key Lane says nobody cares if he's funny. I will tell you, and this is going to come as a shock to nobody, but as somebody that's overly sensitive, and has been my whole meal ticket as being funny. Even though some people don't believe that, man, I thought that was about me. I got really upset. But also don't spread that word. Nobody cares if he's funny. That's like how I've built a whole career. So Will Levis, I don't think we're not going to get too much into the number 1 overall pick just because there's more football stuff to talk about. We'll start with Mizzou. I think because there's not that much new stuff coming out. You know what we should talk about? Like Mizzou has the spring game. Are you going to watch?
Well, the thing is, they're moving it indoors now. Is it still going to be televised? Like, I don't even know.
I will say that, like, so ESPN has shifted into this thing where they're not showing spring games except for like on like SEC Network or like there's like, I think Georgia's on ESPN too. There's only one game on ESPN this entire offseason, and it's Colorado, which is just horseshit.
Oh, wow.
Like, I mean, that's just like blows my mind that's even a thing.
Yeah, so Georgia's the champs. They get ESPN too, and everybody else is SEC Network plus. It's not even SEC Network. It's SEC Network plus streaming. And then like a week later, they'll put it on like 3 a.m. on SEC Network.
But you know why they're doing that?
No, why?
It's to get you to sign up for the app because you can watch it on the app. And I know that to be the case because when I was in Athens last year, me and Liz are sitting there and we're at like a Michi, my buddy's place, who he is like the owner or whatever. And so I was like, hey, like Bama's coming on SEC Network. Can you put it on one of the channels? They're like, no.
Avicii, the DJ?
No, he's dead, isn't he?
Oh. Rest in peace.
R.I.P. Avicii. This is going to be strictly an R.I.P. Avicii episode. Hope you guys are cool with that. No, so like it's called a Michi. They have fantastic wings and pizza. Anyway, but I was like, look, the game. First off, they were like, we're not going to turn on a fucking Bama game for you in Athens, Georgia, so we can watch like during the spring game. And I was like, oh yeah, that also makes sense. So they want you to sign up for ESPN. And I know that it works because I've freaked out. Couldn't remember the login for my actual ESPN account. Had to get another one. So now I have 2 ESPN accounts that I haven't canceled. I still have. I got that ESPN Plus money. So it's whatever.
Wait, so yeah, there's a weird thing because like there's still stuff on the ESPN app. Like you have to have a cable subscription. But then there's certain stuff where you have to have ESPN Plus subscription, which I know because I tried to look at the damn mock draft a week ago and it was like, renew. And I'm like, God damn it. I just want to see what Mel Kiper's got. Like
language. That's like the one thing we're not allowed to say. But I agree with you. I say it out loud every single time I try to get on there. There's nothing worse than being like, all right, let me open up this article that I know I'm going to disagree with because Mel Kiper's going to say some stupid shit that I don't think is real. And then I can't scroll down. And it takes you to like every time. You know what pisses me off too? We haven't answered any of the Mizzou questions. We're not going to. There's no Mizzou fans here. But what pisses me off is that when you click on that, it's like UFC Fight Night, UFC 3022-4. And it's like at some point, just start like I would say name them something, but they'd probably run out of words at this point. Anyway, none of this matters. Continuing our SEC reach around. So we talked about this earlier. There's 2 marquee games that made a little bit of news. We talked about this earlier on your podcast. They made a little bit of news talking about, of course, USC and LSU playing in Vegas, which is like awesome. I'm super excited. If you're like, I texted a couple of LSU guys that, because I go to Baton Rouge, try to go like once a year for at least one game a year. And I was like, we need to move the BR trip to Vegas because like that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I know a lot of LSU fans are going to make that trip. It's going to be the Sunday, the night before Labor Day. So kind of like the same thing they did with Florida State this past year in New Orleans. But this isn't for this season. This is for the next season. And that's when we're going to the 9-game schedule, presumably, with the 3 permanents, which if you believe what we saw, Alabama's going to be a permanent for LSU. What if they get Texas and Oklahoma in year 1 and they got Bama? What if they get Georgia too? And you got to open with USC. Like Brian Kelly may be looking and going, okay, let's just blow this whole thing up. We're not doing, we're scheduling, Wake Forest. We're going to schedule, let's go schedule some softies because that's brutal. Like scheduling USC in a normal 8-game SEC schedule, fine, but going to 9 now and Texas and Oklahoma coming in, I think we're going to start to see more SEC teams go, you know what, we're going to go a little softer on the non-con.
God, again, there's a Big Ten fan just seething somewhere. It's like, and our guest, by the way, we're going to push it back to around 9:10, 9:15. So bear with us on the bracket stuff. We have plenty to break down still because he's got an ornery toddler, but I promise it'll be worth it. It'll be a lot of fun. In the meantime, we get to talk about more of the SEC football on our reach around, like we just said. Here's the thing. Brian Kelly can't complain about that because Brian Kelly's also the one that was like, I came here to play the best. I want to play the best. He's already kind of benefited from, like, he had a good year one, obviously. And then like Saban, because again, as we talked about off air, there's just not a PR firm or someone to help with like sounding like a non-asshole in front of the media, apparently in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, because Saban complains about the schedule, which you're not going to get any sympathy from anyone in the country if you're Alabama, like in a lot of sports, but especially in football and especially under Nick Saban. I don't disagree with you. I don't think that they cancel the USC game necessarily.
It won't be canceled, but like moving forward, I don't see those kind of games scheduled anymore.
For sure.
Like, how's Indiana doing? They want to come play a neutral field game? We'll play them.
I mean,
like, this is what happens, Marler. You add a Texas. Everybody's like, oh, let's get Texas and Oklahoma and Clemson and Florida State. No, stop. Right. Like, you need crappy teams in the conference. You need more Vanderbilts.
Yeah, and also you need those non-cons because you also need those programs need that. I'll never forget the 2020 season when I think it was Kent State. They lost I think it was like $5 million on 3 games. They were supposed to play Bama, Penn State, and someone else. I think it was another SEC school that they were supposed to play on their schedule. And that was going to be $5 million. And that was like 16, I think it was 1/6 of their overall budget for the entire athletic department was those 3 games they were supposed to earn on. It's super helpful for those schools. And it's also,
you know what they say there, right? Can't read, can't write, can't state.
I did not know that.
It's their motto.
It's Nick Saban's alma mater, so that seems rude. It seems like you're just making personal attacks now. Okay, I'm going to pull something up here or ask you to, since you're better at technology than I am, even though I'm supposed to be hosting this and you're supposed to be the co-host. So a couple weeks ago, and I've been previewing this. I've been saying that we were going to talk about this on each of the last 2 episodes, and we haven't done it because of my ADD. I'm going to demand that we do it now. Why is SDS sending me messages on Instagram?
Hey, you up? Is that what they said?
at 8:55. Hey, bro, you up? All right. So SDS came out with a academic style ranking of every quarterback room in the conference. Okay. Now, I don't envy anybody that makes these lists. I think they're very difficult to do. I don't think it's worth it. I know that Connor has to do a lot of these, and I don't envy that at all. Going through some of these, and I'm trying to find it right now. There's a couple that stood out to me, and once I get it, I'll be able to pull it up. Have you been able to find it? Probably not.
Oh, so they took all the quarterback rooms and kind of gave a grade?
Right. Yeah. No, I just found it. So I'm going to send you a copy of this. This is what this looks like. I'm going to go in alphabetical order. Okay. Hi, internet. Hey, Jay. Appreciate you being here. All right. So I'm going to go in order, and I'm sending it to you right now so you can be able to look at it. Bama. That is a B. Arkansas, A-. Auburn, C-. Florida, D. Georgia, A. Kentucky, A-. LSU, A. Mississippi State, B+. Mizzou, C+. Ole Miss, A+, the highest in the conference. Tennessee, A. I want to say that again. South Carolina, B. A&M, C. Vanderbilt, C-. So if you're looking at that from the top, so you have the highest grade was given to Ole Miss, obviously. Lowest to Florida with a D. You had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the 14 teams got an A ranking of some sort. So Ole Miss, followed by Georgia and Tennessee and LSU. And then all three of them had A's, and then A- to Kentucky and Arkansas. Right off the bat, I would ask you, which one of these who do you think has the best quarterback room? I'm not just saying starting quarterback, but quarterback room in the conference. And which of these also, after that, you answer that one, do you think has the biggest problem here? Because I feel like there's one that is glaring to me that I am shocked by.
Well, this thing is flawed. First off, this thing's flawed because if we're just talking room, so I guess like the benefit of having a great quarterback room is if our starter goes down with an injury, that the backup behind him is very good and will be just fine.
Right.
I think you also need to, in this grading, if a team has a great starter who's back for his third or fourth year and he's really good, that should get a good grade.
Mm-hmm.
But if the backup behind him is an unknown and not very good, how do you weigh that? So that's where this is all kind of flawed. The Ole Miss one jumps out to me. Spencer Sanders was a very productive quarterback at Oklahoma State.
Mm-hmm.
Jackson Dart was mixed bag last year, some good, some not so good. And then Walker Howard, we don't know what he is yet. 5-star quarterback. But like, okay, yeah, the room looks good, but only one guy's going to start. And so if it's Spencer Sanders, we don't know what he is in the SEC. He may be a middle of the pack quarterback. So while Ole Miss has an A+ quarterback room, their quarterback productivity may just be middle of the pack in the SEC. So that's where I kind of have a problem with it. But if I'm just going based on the room, again, like Tennessee as an A, as much as I believe in Joe Milton and I like what we saw at him at the end of the year, he's not Hendon Hooker. He may be very productive. And then Nico Yamalieva, I think he's highly touted but again has not played a down of college football yet. So that one I would probably go B for Tennessee right now until what we see what Milton is.
I do think I wouldn't disagree with that. I do think the ceiling is much higher than where the floor is. Like I don't know if I would go lower than a B. Like, I mean, Joe Milton would have to be really bad. And I would think I would give them a B, B-.
Like overthrow guys like he did 2 years ago?
His whole career, besides like the one Orange Bowl game that he played in. Like, I don't like here. And here's the other thing too. As I say this a lot on here, like, but like, as with anything, like the head, I'm not a smart man. Okay. But I know what love is. I don't actually. That's a terrible, terrible example. I don't know why. Me of all people should not use that example.
You are good at eating chocolates, though. So
I love chocolates. Who doesn't? I'm not great at running, as I told you today. I sprained my ankle walking, which is tough to do. But no. So like when you talk about like, it's another good point from Jay. It says, whose QB room have we seen the most of? When you talk about like from Tennessee, I do think the ceiling's high there, but what goes into, as like with anything, like head coach success, I never realized until a couple of years ago how important it was to have like really good coaching staff, right? Like really good coordinators, really good recruiters. There's so many things that go into it, and it's kind of simple. Like I think Kirby kind of like pretends like it's like super simple. It's like, just get elite talent, bring him in here. But there's so many moving parts to it. For a quarterback, there's a lot of moving parts to it. Like, how's the offensive line? How's your supporting cast? How's the run game? How are the receivers? Tennessee loses. It's not just that Tennessee is losing Hendon Hooker, who put up ridiculous numbers in back-to-back seasons, right? Like, because people forget how good he was 2 years ago, before even this season. They're losing Jalen Hyatt. They're losing Cedric Tillman. They're losing a first-round draft pick at left tackle. So that's where my concern from Tennessee would be, right? I think LSU with like, in my opinion, and I know the talent that's in Georgia's room. I really do. And I think it's maybe the best in the entire conference, regardless of the weird, I'll call it like a Brooklyn Nets big three that is in Oxford right now. Cause it's like, man, like on paper, sure, Spencer Sanders has been a starter forever. Have you seen Spencer Sanders' numbers?
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not great. Like, I mean, we added it up last week. He's got 67 career touchdowns. And 40 interceptions in 4 years as a quarterback. That's not great. In LSU, I really love Nussmeier, man. I think Nussmeier is a really, really good quarterback that's gotten, I think, better.
Yeah, he's throwing like 130 passes. So like like, it's funny. I was going to say, I think Alabama and Georgia are in the two best spots just in terms of quarterback rooms, even though those are the two that we don't know who the starter is yet. But yeah, I mean, we've seen Carson Beck in small doses. Brock Vandagriff, Gunnar Stockton, we haven't really seen. So, like, it's so limited with Garrett Nussmeier. They played him the whole second half of the SEC championship game, played with Jaden Daniels in the bowl game. So he's got a little bit of enough of a sample size that we've seen him. So, yeah, to that point, like the Ole Miss guys, we've seen Jackson Dart a good bit and Spencer Sanders, and we've seen Jaden Daniels and Nussmeier a good bit with LSU. But I don't know. Again, if you're still asking me like best room, I think I put Alabama and Georgia at the top.
Yeah, I'm surprised that so many people are sleeping on Bama, and maybe this is like, it's even Ben Diesel says Nuss tore us apart in Atlanta. I mean, again, and it was, listen, the game was put away, the game was over. But yeah, I mean, and then it's hard to ignore that second half, because anytime you put up 500 yards of offense on a Kirby Smart defense, it's hard to ignore that.
Well, how did TCU do in the second half in a game that was already decided? You know, like
really good point. Unless you're a TCU fan, then I'm sorry for him, because that's tough. But no, in Purdue gets like mollywopped every single time they play an SEC team. It seems like in a bowl game, like this, they're averaging, I think in their last 5 bowl games, I think they're 1-4, with that one win being kind of a fluke against Tennessee. They've given up like an average of like 43 points per game in those games against the SEC.
I think their new starter is Hudson Card, isn't it? The castaway from Texas. Yeah. So good luck.
Kicking ball. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, like, honestly, he probably should have started over Ewers in that game against Bama. So, no, I'm kidding. But like, I do think that I'm surprised about the Bama, with the B. I've said this on here before. I do think that Saban is more confident with what he has than what people are giving him credit for, which I'm sure sounds like I'm being a homer on it, but whatever. And I could be totally wrong. There's a very real part of me that wants to watch an entire season play with Jalen Milroe, because I think that Jalen Milroe is so exciting athletically, but I think there's a ceiling on that season at 9 or 10 wins.
And the turnovers against A&M was kind of, that's concerning. But yeah, it's funny. I'll go back. I've said the words after Tua left. That offseason, I said the words something along the lines of, dude, Mac Jones is nothing. Like this guy's, he's not Tua. This guy's not even close to what Tua was. And look at, like he proved me and a lot of people wrong that year. So that guy could be Ty Simpson. It could be Jalen Milroe, with people doubting, going, oh, well, Bama, we don't even know what they have at quarterback. Well, turns out it might be something pretty good.
Yeah, and you get new coordinators and all that kind of stuff. So it'll be very different. I will stand by, too, the A&M thing. It wasn't a good game. He didn't play very well. It did have a very real feeling that it didn't feel like the game plan was necessarily there for him. Like, it kind of felt like there was like Bill O'Brien was like, we're running my offense, right? And I don't give a shit what you guys want to do. Like, that's kind of what it felt like. Jay brings A&M here. He said,
Connor Wegman, a C. Like, that dude was good down the backstretch of the season.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that, man. I really was. There's a lot on here. Again, it's March. This is all off-season fodder, and we don't really know what's going to happen. There's so much that, I'll ask you another question here. Looking at these numbers and the players that we know, right, like that are in play. I brought this up on your podcast. I still think it's super, super interesting, and it could be nothing, but it seems super interesting to me because Vegas is never wrong. When you look at, like, it's either DraftKings or FanDuel that has the Heisman Trophy odds out right now, and Carson Beck is plus 4,000, and Brock Vandagriff is plus 1,800. And I know that Kirby came out today and he made the comment about Gunnar Stockton and, don't sleep on him. And I've heard, our good buddy Graham Coffey made a couple comments about it. I don't think there's anything that's that off base that maybe it's motivation, or maybe he is going to see more snaps. Who knows? But I do think that Vegas is onto something. And I think that a lot of people probably feel like the same way that Brock Vandagriff probably isn't going to be in Athens if he's not the starter after the spring practice, because he's good enough to start somewhere.
And the first guy that should be on the phone with him is Hugh Freeze at Auburn, because I think it's like the early reports out of Auburn is that quarterbacks haven't looked good. Oh, really? Right. You brought in nobody to compete with Robbie Ashford. Like, what are you doing?
Right.
Like, even even LSU, when they had Miles Brennan and Garrett Nussmeier, they still brought in Jaden Daniels, and he won the job. Like, you're really going to rest your laurels on Robbie Ashford being the savior? And he may be good, but, like, bring in somebody to compete.
Yeah. I think his mom finally stopped following me on Twitter, so I'm allowed to say that now. So, anyway, all right, real quick, before we get into basketball stuff with our good buddy Mike Calabrese, we are going to finish up our SEC reach around with a trip to Athens, which, listen, if anybody knows about putting on weight, especially bad weight, especially in Athens, it's me. I love going to Athens. I've never left there without either a hangover or a headache of some sort. I'm obviously making jokes here because I don't think that's what happened here with the player we're going to talk about. But you had the pro day today, Georgia's pro day in Athens. I turned it on for a little bit. I forgot that it was on. Okay, and I'm in the middle of a meeting with my manager, like my direct manager, who's like over in London, and we're like in there with like a couple other people, and it's like people I'm supposed to be like in front of, right? Like on my best behavior. Whatever the fucking like New Yorker that's on that First Take show with Stephen A. Smith that's just constantly yelling, Mike the Mad Dog, whatever. Right. He's just screaming in the background the whole time. And I was like, Jesus Christ, I've got to get this off. Luckily, the Georgia Pro Day was on, so I turned it on. Blown away by just the physical stature of Broderick Jones. That was my biggest takeaway of the day. He looked as in good a shape as any offensive lineman I think I may have ever seen. And I'm probably being a prisoner of the moment. I'm probably overreacting a little bit. He looked incredible. The big news of the day, and we talked about this on your podcast as well, or Locked On SEC, is that Jalen Carter did not have a good showing. He was, 2 weeks removed from the Senior Bowl. I'm sorry, the NFL's combine, where he obviously had to leave, got arrested, was wearing the same shirt from the combine in his what do you call it, pick?
Mugshot.
Comes back and is not able to finish even position drills, doesn't run the 40. What your thoughts on what his underwhelming performance, and does it matter at all? Because I would say no.
Yeah, I think this matters more than the story that ended up coming out of, he was racing the night of the crash and left the scene and all that. Like, all that is whatever. Like, he'll have to answer to teams for that. At the end of the day, that's whatever. Like, don't do anything boneheaded like that again.
Right.
But this is like wearing swim trunks and a tank top to your job interview. Like, dude, all you had to do was be impressive this one day. You skipped you didn't do anything at the combine. So, like, you said you were going to do everything on your pro day. Now we get to your pro day and you don't run the 40, you don't do any other drills, and you're 9 pounds overweight, and then you cramp up and leave, and then you don't even talk to anybody. Like, yeah, I think this is going to have him fall. I've already seen some mock drafts where he's going down to 15.
That's crazy.
18. It's crazy, but it's like, we know the player, and he's a freak. Even Kirby defended him today and said, like, look, anybody want to talk about his work ethic or him as a player, I will defend him to the ends of the earth. Like, get all that. But still, Mike Tomlin's there today from the Steelers, and he sees that, and he goes, hey, I'd love to talk to Jalen. Oh, Jalen left already. Not a good look, dude. Not a good look. All you had to do was be on today, and you would have been fine. But, again, not a good look with gaining the weight and the cramps and all that. I would not be surprised if he slides.
Listen, a lot of people, when they start menstruation, get cramps and gain weight. So it's not a thing that's very uncommon in a lot of households.
Just that time of month?
It might just be that time of month for Jalen Carter. I will say, like, Brandon Marcello was joking around about this earlier, and I hit him up on it because he said something about how he's like, man, like, I just don't think it's a big deal, and I agree with him because I think there's so much time from now until like when the season starts. And Jay again makes another good point. You've been an incredible ad today here, where there's smoke, there's fire, and like, the kid's been under a lot of scrutiny. I know that Georgia fans are going to go to bat for him, and I admire it, and I totally understand. I still think he's the most can't miss prospect in the entire draft. I don't. That's just how I feel. I could be. I don't know the off-field character concerns that McShay talked about. I'm not in the locker room. I don't know any of that kind of stuff, and we're not going to get into any of it because it's been. I think that it's not something that's a productive conversation at this point. I will say, like you said, I remember my first job interview out of college. The first thing I remember asking, they told me what I was going to be making at this like really shitty sales job in radio. They said, um, what was it? It was like they told me what my salary was going to be, and I remember looking at it. I go, no, is that before or after taxes? And every single one of them were like, is this guy a fucking idiot? Like, should we not have offered him this job? Like, what's he talking about? And I just, I mean, so I know what it's like to give a bad interview. I get it. I was surprised that he had this very big moment, and it's also on TV. And it's like, dude, there's a lot of stuff that you could have helped yourself with. That being said, I pray that this drops him to 8. I don't think the Falcons are smart enough to actually draft anyone from Georgia that high because they're idiots and they do this every year. I'm sure that they'll get a fucking defensive back from some small group of 5 school in the Pacific Northwest, like they seem to fucking always do. But like,
or a Clemson DB.
Oh my God. Well, actually, he's been fun. But yeah, it's just so frustrating. So I was surprised. I think it was kind of just like you said, like it's just surprising.
Let me pass this. This is from my buddy Lance Zierlein, who works for the NFL Network. He had tweeted that out today. He said the wait is a big concern considering this is the most important job interview of your life. Right. Testing was expected to be a positive, and now he's not testing. The slide could be very real for him. He said, you know, like if he starts sliding, it's going to be hard to pass on that talent.
Right.
But the question is, do you have the leadership in the locker room to help guide what might be maybe a little bit of an immature guy right now with
yeah. And he's young
going on. So I don't know. I just know he's a hell of a talent. And if all this is just a blip on the radar for him, then somebody's going to get a steal.
That is a good point about the leadership in the locker room. Like Arizona's there, but JJ Watt's gone, right? Like there's like you do need that probably at some point. But man, can you imagine him and Grady Jarrett next to each other in Atlanta? I would be so pumped. The Falcons would still find a way to blow every single close game they played, but it would be up the middle. You're not running.
Well, they got Taylor Heineke, man, so they're ready to go.
I hate everything. I hate the city. I love the city, but I hate it. All right, everyone that's listening, everyone that's here, we love you. Thank you for being here. It's bracket time, my friend. It is time to fill out a bracket. I haven't filled one out yet.
Onions.
I'm super pumped. This is like tomorrow is, especially if you're getting a vasectomy, it's the best day of the year. It's a big vasectomy day. I'm not just making that up. I know we just talked about our SEC reach around. We're moving on from that. We are going to be joined by our good buddy Mike Calabrese. I'm gonna text him the link right now. Where are we at here? Oh boy. I'm just getting sent tons and tons of Brandon Miller stuff. I have to talk about this, so it's probably in good timing. Anyway, so the tournament has already started. It's actually going on right now. I don't know who won between Charles Dickinson and whatever that other fucking 16 seed that was playing in the play-in game. But tomorrow, you got the first day of March Madness where it's like the 12:10 to like midnight, a full day of it. And I can't wait. Like, what is your favorite? Like, is this, in terms of sports days, is this one of your favorite days of the year?
Yeah, and it's the first day of the tournament. It's right. Friday even loses some of the luster. Like, and I understand some of your favorite teams may not even be playing until Friday. Like Kentucky doesn't play till Friday, but like tomorrow is the day where your bracket is perfect.
Right.
Like everything's set, and I think a lot of people like to take off of work tomorrow and go sit at a bar by 11 o'clock and be ready to go for all the action. Yeah, tomorrow ranks up there as one of the best days of the sports calendar.
Yeah, we talked about this a couple weeks ago. This is my favorite time of year because there's so much that goes on where it's like, I don't give a shit about spring training. I know you're a big Astros guy because you live in Houston and you love trash cans. But I mean, I think that I'm kidding.
And Slim Thug.
What's that? And Slim Thug. No, but you have a sponsor for vasectomies. That is, it's like I struggle with this every week. Our sponsor is Texas Pete. We love Texas Pete. I'll give them a shout out right now. The only thing that's going to be hotter than the money I'm going to be making, or at least burning a hole through my pocket and gambling with this weekend, is going to be Texas Pete on all your snacks. And by the way, Texas Pete's come out with a popcorn. Like they sent 2 bags of it. Gordy, I went through the entire thing in 2 days. Like the entire thing. There he is. There's Mike Calabrese. We're going to bring him on here in a second. But no, so like this is the best time of year because you have spring training, which is whatever. I think opening day is like, we're like a little bit over 2 weeks away.
30th, I think.
Okay. I mean, the Red Sox suck, so I don't really care as of right now. But like this day, and you have some spring games coming up. The Masters is right around the corner. I mean, it's a great time of year. So, all right.
Derby.
What's that?
Kentucky Derby coming up.
That's using my birthday weekend too. I love that. All right, we're gonna bring in our special guest. This is a gambling guru. Take down Mike? It's been way too long for one, but I'm already mad at you because I'm looking in the background and you have fucking A&M. Oh, I see what you're doing. Is this your Final Four?
No, this is not my Final Four, but
no,
I was hoping to get your goat. Seems like I did right off the bat. I only have 250 mini helmets in my office. I could have picked any one, but here we are.
You thought it was going to be about Brandon Miller, but you put up a fucking Texas A&M and Arizona helmet facing each other, which is Arizona, who I have knocking Bama out, and then we have A&M, obviously, who I can't stand just from beating us in because of Kip and his birthday celebrations with what do you call it? We're joined here also. This is Chris Gordy. I don't know if you guys have met. Introduce yourselves. Mike is a gambling guru, and he's going to make a lot of money right off the bat, man. We'll go through some of the stuff with the bracket. What are you most excited for? What's the biggest thing that jumped out to you looking at the bracket when it was released?
So every year I like to laser in on that 12-5, 13-4 matchups because generally speaking, the committee, they take the best of the automatic qualifiers from those true mid-major conferences. They give them those spots. And in a lot of cases, it's those teams that are kind of backsliding into the 4 and 5 slots where they had aspirations to be a top 10 team, didn't quite work out. And in a lot of cases, you have one team that's surging, another team that's like kind of treading water a little bit. And it's really profitable to play those to the point that I had this betting system where I bet every 13 and every 12 on the spread and on the money line. So 16 bets in total every single tournament. It's been a profitable system. 11 of the last 14 tournaments kind of takes the guesswork out of it. And also these are the upsets you're rooting for anyway. And like if you're out at a bar, like everybody wants to see those small schools win in the first place. So it's fun on top of, making a little extra coin.
Okay. So I want to repeat this real quick because some of our listeners like what Mike does, and we talk about you a lot on this podcast. Like I know it's been like a year since you've been on here. We talk about you a lot because from a gambling side, like standpoint, which is like kind of where our roots are and what we talked about, especially when back in the day of it being winning and boozing, talking about some of like the bets, like you just said you have a system play, and I know there's like some of our listeners, not everyone's huge into gambling. Like maybe explain what you mean by that for one, but also like. Because I think what happens a lot when people are gambling is you get drawn to the big names and you get drawn to like the big easy bets, like or like what you think could be a big payday. Like, let me throw in like a crazy parlay, or let me throw in like this. What Mike does is just makes money. Like he makes good bets. Like every time there's like a big game, and I'll text you, and I feel proud of myself a little bit on this one because I feel like I've started to come in line with some of the stuff that you'll say, and I won't tell you that I have like. Here's what I have my eye on, and you'll say it. I'm like, yes, I have that too. So I feel like I'm smarter than I probably am. But explain the system play and what it is you're really like the goal is.
So one of the hardest things, even for professional gamblers, even for sharps, is that you have a certain amount of emotion that comes into it. You have bogey teams, or is one of the terms that gets thrown around, where it's like no matter what, you bet on them, you bet against them, you always lose money. So you start to throw, good money after bets. System plays essentially are you try to take all of that off the table. And in a lot of cases, you do it before the season starts, where you're like, if these parameters are all checked, all these boxes are checked, I'm going to bet it no matter what. The other system that I use for March Madness is one that I've always been fascinated with because the tournament sends these teams to the weirdest venues. Like Albany, New York is hosting a tournament. Albany, like when you drive into town, it should have a sign that says Albany, New York, closed since 2011. Like it is like 85% commercial vacancy. Like the place is an absolute dump. The NCAA tournament couldn't wait to get into Albany. And they're sending St. Mary's across the country to play at that venue at an 11 a.m. body clock tip-off. So what I do from a system perspective is I look at the 4 teams that are traveling the furthest in the first round, and I fade them every single year. And that has paid out over 61% against the spread since 2014. So that's just something that philosophically I believe in, where it's like their fans don't show up because you're not going from California to Albany, New York. And then just in general, it's for a higher seed in particular, like St. Mary's. They had a great season. They spent a lot of the year in like the 12 to 15 range in the AP poll, and they got absolutely worked by the committee. This isn't the worst possible situation situationally for them. So I just, I go in and I lock in those, those system plays ahead of time. And then I build out the rest of my card based on, how I'm feeling, for teams playing heading into the tournament.
I love that.
Mike, let me ask you, we know just about every year, a 12 beats a 5. Who are we looking at this year? Because I look at them and I'm like, I can't talk myself into any of them. I feel like all the 5s are pretty strong. So give me a 12 versus a 5 you like.
The most. You're betting all of them, you said.
I am betting all of them. The 2 that I like the most, I just mentioned St. Mary's traveling to Albany. They're playing against a VCU defense that turns everybody over. They'll force like 15, 16 turnovers in this game. And Ace Baldwin, their point guard, is the kind of player that takes over in March that people fall in love with. So when you look at that and the fact that VCU has a very strong fan base, they're going to make the trip up the Eastern Seaboard and be there and have a presence in Albany. So I think they're game to win that game outright. And then College of Charleston, another weird travel game. San Diego State wins the Mountain West Conference regular season and the tournament. And the reward is they have to play in South Florida. So they're traveling across the country. And Charleston is a team that won over 30 games this year. And a term that gets thrown around in college basketball gambling a lot is high variance. Alabama is a high variance team. Why? Because they shoot a lot of 3-pointers. So you end up making 12 or 15 threes. Just about no one's going to beat you. No one shoots more 3-pointers than the Charleston Cougars. Wow. So they're going to fire up like 30 trays in this game. And if they make 10 plus, I think they're going to shock San Diego State, who, by the way, is outside the top 200 in effective field goal percentage. So if their defense isn't lights out, they're not going to win this game or another game in the tournament.
And what's interesting about that is that, like, Seth Barham on ESPN, the first team he threw out there was like, hey, who's the team that's like you think could go far as a 5 seed? And it wasn't Duke, who was a 5 seed after winning the ACC, which is pretty fucking crazy, to be honest. Like, I mean, but like it was San Diego State. So I'm glad you brought that up. Looking at we're traditionally we're based in the SEC. He's in Houston. I'm in Atlanta. We cover the SEC a lot. Obviously, you've worked with SDS. From an SEC standpoint, one, thanks to the committee for giving me an all-nighter tonight so I can do all these stupid matchup breakdowns with 6 games tomorrow, which is real sweet of them. What matchup do you think is the biggest potential for like I guess like besides Bama, right? Because you only have like one top-tier seed, I would think, out of the conference. Who makes the deepest run, do you think, or who's set up the best? Who do you think is an early exit as well?
So Bama, let's put aside all of the outside of basketball elements that potentially could interfere with how they play. If Bama plays their best basketball for 6 games, they're going to win the national championship. And when you look at their path, the path is so critical considering when you're comparing apples to apples, 1s and 2 seeds across all 4 regions. They have a pretty favorable draw. I mean, compared to some of these other teams, like Purdue is walking right into a buzzsaw in the round of 32. They're either going to catch Kendrick Davis, who's an absolute flamethrower out of the backcourt for Memphis. He could drop 40 points on them. Or they're going to play FAU, who's one of the best stories and best scoring offenses in the country as well. Right. So when it comes to guard play, Purdue's, in deep water immediately. So I think Bama is well positioned. I also think there's a chance that Arkansas could put it together. They have 3 potential future pros on that team. Illinois is a team that, just from like a storyline narrative standpoint, I don't know if there's a coach in the country that hates his own team more than Brad Underwood in Illinois. Like, he basically called them quitters like 3 weeks into the season, and it hasn't got a whole lot better since then. I mean, they do some things really well. They protect the rim, which is difficult for Arkansas. They want to get to the 10 and get to the foul line a lot. But if Arkansas can get by there, get by the Fighting Illini, I think there's a chance they upset the 1 in the round of 32. So that's the rose-colored glass quick look at the SEC. Yeah, I'm also down on some SEC teams. I think Tennessee's on upset watch. Without their point guard, they weren't setting the world on fire offensively to begin with, and now they're up against a Louisiana team that is playing with house money. I think they've won like 14 to 15 headed into the tournament, and they have a former McDonald's All-American center who's it's going to be a strength on strength battle in the trenches, and that's what Tennessee usually does best. But if he goes for 25 and 10, I think the Raging Cajuns have a shot to shock the Vols right off the bat.
Yeah. Let me ask you something, Mike. You mentioned Arkansas and Musselman, back-to-back Elite Eights. How much value do we put in coaches who have been there, done that, and have a great track record? I mean, maybe don't have the best team on paper, but yet coaching experience? How much does that matter?
A ton, in my opinion. I absolutely am a believer in how do you handle these tournament moments? How do you prepare your team? How do you work with your staff? Because essentially you're scouting for 2 games in 1 week where you have to look ahead and you don't even know who you're going to play in the next round. Sometimes it's a little bit easier for Musselman. He knows he's going to get a 1 seed, but in a lot of cases you have to game plan for 2 teams. So I think his track record really does come into play. And I think it's kind of a calming effect where he can speak to his team and say, listen, we were close. We almost upset, the Crimson Tide in T-Town. It didn't happen, but we're right there. And I know it because I've been there before. I've taken teams deep on runs. You guys are as good as any other group that I've coached. And the other factor, obviously, is Nick Smith Jr. Like, I was shocked that he didn't shut it down. A guy who is a consensus top 10 NBA draft pick. Most of the time in this NIL era and the NBA draft era, it's like everyone's just focusing on the combine and, working with their own private workout coaches and things like that. He clearly came back to make a run in this tournament and to try to, essentially this is a 1-player draft. The French unicorn coming in, he's going to be the number 1 pick. I think he's minus 40,000 to be the number 1 pick, but anything else is up for grab. You can work your way all the way into that 2 to 3, 4 conversation. So if he has a Steph Curry like run, puts the team on his back, I think he can, really increase his bank account if he does this right.
I met a French unicorn on the spring break one time, but I had to get penicillin, so it was not the same. No, so like, let me ask you this before I'll give you maybe 1 or 2 more questions before we get into like actually making picking Final Four and your best bets, if that's okay with you, because I know that also you do content for a living, and I don't want to be giving away any of your premium stuff here. But the 2 real quick out of these 3 teams, okay, like almost like a kill, marry, screw type deal. But who do you think will go the furthest out of these 3 teams? Because I think going into the tournament, these 3 guys or these 3 teams could have convinced me they could make the deepest run. A&M, Auburn, Arkansas. And I know Auburn struggled, but like all 3 of them got pretty tough draws. Who do you think? I know you just said Arkansas, you spoke very highly of them. Who do you think could make the deepest run out of those 3?
So I do think it's Arkansas. Auburn, I think really benefits from somehow getting to play in Birmingham. That's an absolute gift. They're already playing against a team that really struggles on the road. Iowa, this is the weirdest thing. Like if Iowa got to play all 6 games in Iowa City, they could win the national championship. But they just they turn into a pumpkin when it comes to playing on the road. And I think in this case, Auburn's going to get out of that first round. A&M, I agree. They just have an awful draw. Penn State is really well coached. That coach is probably headed to Georgetown. I think that's almost a done deal. He's going to get a huge pay bump, and he deserves it. They're one of the most veteran teams in the country, and they're just lights out shooters. So everything that, from a weakness perspective, that the Aggies have, Penn State has a strength there. So I think that's the worst matchup of the 3 that you mentioned.
Other question I have, and this is Gordy's wife and also our biggest basketball fan base with SDS. Tell me about Kentucky. What do you think they can do? Because I've said this all year, and I hate that we give so much credence to Kentucky of being like, you know what, they can put it together in March. Like we watch them fumble around and kind of fall over themselves and trip over their own shoes. Like for much of December and January, it seemed like, and then all of a sudden it's like I just get tired of the narrative that they're going to turn it on when it matters most. They kind of have done that despite what happened with Vandy the past couple weeks. How far do you think they go in the tourney?
I think they got a Sweet 16 run in them. It's funny. There's this growing community of advanced analytics gurus, Evan Maya, Bart Torvik. Bart Torvik sounds like a name that Bart Simpson made up for himself, to get a fake ID or something like that. But Bart Torvik does an incredible job, and so much of his information you can sort by time or opponent, yada, yada, yada. The upshot here is that Kentucky in the last month of the season, 3rd ranked offense in the entire country. So they did rev it up. And I think now that they're getting a little bit healthier, there's no Vandy in this tournament. They don't have to play in Nashville. So I think they put those ghosts behind them. I understand that there's some ugly losses on their resume, but the reality is it's a nice draw against a Providence team. I know it's the Bryce Hopkins revenge game. I think he'll probably have a good game for the Friars, but that's about it. So I think they get out of there pretty easily. And then outside of that, Coach Cal is someone who generally can surprise when the expectations are lower in the tournament. You saw him do it when they went as an 8 seed all the way to the Final Four. So I think this is an opportunity for him to show that he still has some tricks. But in general, I think their roster is kind of tailor-made for a mini run. They do need Sheboy to play better.
Yeah.
Just more consistently. It's a little bit shocking for a guy who's the National Player of the Year to come back and kind of be up and down a little bit. But I think the tournament has the opportunity to be that bomb that, soothes all the wounds of this entire season. And I think Big Blue Nation will get it done. Not that a Sweet 16 run is going to be satisfying to their fan base, but I think from a national perspective, people may be shocked to see them do it.
All right. Last question. We'll get you out of here because I know you got a fussy toddler. And you've probably been, I know this is the busiest time of year for you. And I'm sure you're more responsible gambler than I am. So you probably have most of your bets in already, but if you still need to do that, we'll let you go. Final 4 teams. And who do you think cuts down the nets in Houston?
So I wanted to be true to myself, where basically since January, I've been beating the drum that this is the worst year for the top teams in my lifetime of watching college basketball. At one point, there was more losses by the number 1 and number 2 ranked teams in an entire season since the 40s. So it's like the proof is there that the top teams just keep falling. In a lot of cases, they were falling to unranked teams. So I was like, I can't just go chalk. I can't get enamored with the seed lines. Let me just look at the teams that their winning DNA, when you look at Ken Pom and kind of their versatility in terms of their roster, just focus on that, not necessarily where they're seated. And with that in mind, I have Creighton, I have Marquette, I have UConn, and I have Texas, and I have Texas beating Creighton in the national championship. Certainly a grouping that I think is surprising to most. I didn't necessarily set out to be this Big East heavy. I think it was a top 3 conference, but I wasn't enamored with their teams throughout the year. But I think the fact that Marquette just won at Madison Square Garden, they get to go back there for the regional.
Right.
I think that continuity is going to help them. Creighton is incredible. They have 5 starters that score over 11 points per game. They have a true 7-footer. So if they run into Arizona, which they likely will in the Sweet 16, they actually have the size to check them in that regard. And then on the other side, what are you doing that's special? UConn is the best offensive rebounding team in the country. They just come at you at waves. So what I like about that is to win 6 games, generally you're going to have an off night shooting in a 6-game stretch. That's not going to affect them because they're going to get 12 to 15 extra opportunities. And then Texas, if you told me 20 years ago, a national contender loses their coach in the middle of the season, I'd say, okay, they're done. But it's just weird. Like, people just move on a little bit faster in this area. I feel like they've almost like circled the wagons and kind of better. They got better. They just kept getting better. Dylan Dessou was even better in the Big 12 tournament, and he was, he's like their 6th option offensively. So at this point, I think they're so well balanced. When you look at their Ken Pom numbers, they don't beat themselves. And they have a plus turnover margin. They're 10th nationally in the country. So they don't turn it over. They turn other teams over. If they can do a little bit better job rebounding and watch out for a potentially tricky 2nd-round matchup against a red-hot Penn State team, I think they're going to go all the way to the Final Four and end up cutting down the nuts.
I like it. I mean, I don't. I hate it. And you're kind of a dickhead for picking Creighton in the same region that Bama's in. But Mike, man, I can't say thank you enough. It's always fascinating the content that you come up with and how accurate it is, obviously, as well. But I know this is like a hugely busy time for you, so can't say thank you enough for being able to join us. Tell everyone where they can find you. Give them your address, social security number, all that good stuff, and we'll talk to you soon, man. I'm sure. All
right, let's take a look here. My mother's maiden name. Okay, so you guys can find me over on Twitter at East Breeze. That's Breese. I had to throw an extra E in there because people in high school called me Bress. Can't have that. That's not a winning. Yeah. That's not a winning formula. So you can find me there. All of my work for the Action Network on the Big Bets on Campus podcast, as well as all their video content. I was up there in New York City shooting a lot of new stuff for them in their studio. So how to fill out your bracket, Cinderellas to consider, all of that is available. And the last piece, Chad Millman's award-winning podcast, The Favorites on the Action Network, I break down Friday's slate. So that'll drop on Thursday afternoon. That was a really fun conversation with him and Simon Hunter, who's a professional gambler, super sharp in the world of NFL football. So those are all the spots you can find me. Hit me up on Twitter. I'm going to be sweating out these games right there with you. They'll be, I'm on Oral Roberts to upset Duke. I'm on Furman to upset Virginia. So
love it.
Statistically speaking, some of this stuff is not going to happen. So I will be right there down in the dumps with your broken bracket. So feel free to commiserate with me.
All right, dude. We appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man. Take care.
All right, Gordy, let's close out here. I've held you hostage long enough. I apologize. You've been great. I appreciate you co-hosting with me.
Oh, that's good stuff. I got some bets now to go make for tomorrow.
He's the best. He is like we'll talk about stuff like in football season. And I remember I forgot what it was, but he's the one that got me into this because him and I have like different betting formulas and stuff like that. And he's like I remember talking to him. We're going over like bets. This is like a year or two ago, and he goes, Chris, it's like you don't understand what a bankroll is. And I'm like, brother, if you knew anything about my personal finances, you would have already known that. Like, this is not in question. But like when we talk about like from a gambling standpoint, like the measured success and the stuff he goes with is like I'm huge into first half bets and first quarter bets, but especially first half when it comes to like betting college football. One of his big things, and I've made a killing off of it, like with Bama as of late, but it's like one team win the first half, the other team to win the full game. And in college basketball, there's so many different like swings. It happens more often than not. He's really, really good at what he does. I'm going to get in huge trouble for bringing somebody on from Action Network just with my company, but I love Mike to death. So hopefully I still have a job tomorrow. That being said, it was an odd Final Four.
Yeah. But he went with teams that have been there, done that, right? Like,
right.
UConn and Creighton and Marquette always make deep runs. Xavier's the other one. They always seem to go on deep runs. So like you can't go wrong, I would think, with some of the teams that are always there. But the Texas dynamic is weird. And by the way, we didn't even talk about Chris Beard getting hired by Ole Miss, but
I'm not just real quick on it. I want to, like, I would like, I think it's an important thing to talk about. I'm admittedly not up to speed. I haven't done enough of my own research to have an opinion on where I don't want to feel like I don't want to make an accusation of like what's what, because I know the charges were dropped.
Yeah, but you can read the police report. I mean,
it seems like a pretty. I'll just fucking say it. It seems like a very we don't give a shit about women type move. It just and I hate it. I hate it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the one of two things either happened. Either he hit his fiance and she called the police and she had bruises. According to the police report, she had bruises from it. Mm-hmm. Or two, she beat herself and lied about it and he's with her, and that's a problem too. So one of these things is a problem.
Yeah.
But hey, let's go win basketball games, right? Anyway.
And the proximity of when it happened is like, that's where the surprise for me was.
It happens in December. He gets fired in January. Not even 2 months later, he's got his new job. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Will Wade just had to set out a full year for paying players, which is legal now. Like, what are we doing?
Right. Yeah. But, I don't. Again, we'll talk about the next one. I appreciate your input on it and opinion, because it's just.
The point I was going to make with Texas real quick is like, they had Shaka Smart, who was in over his head.
Right.
They had Chris Beard, who the 1 year there underachieved, like didn't make a deep run. And now this dude, Rodney Terry, who becomes the interim coach, he's like the best of all of them. And they still haven't even announced, like, we're taking the interim tag off and making you the guy. So, hey, hashtag victory for Rodney Terry. Let's go. Give that man that job.
He looks just like Gus Johnson too, by the way.
A little bit.
Yeah. Who's your Final Four?
So I have Bama, UCLA, Houston, only because it's in Houston. I think if they get there, that's going to be a problem because they're going to have so many fans there. And then my lower seed that I'm riding hot hand with, Memphis. I think Memphis comes
really?
Yeah. They've been playing really well.
People really don't like Purdue. Like, people are really, really down on Purdue.
Because they have that goofy 7-foot dude who's good, but like I don't know anything else about their game. Every time I watch, they're like, he's 7 foot tall. It's like, okay. But how much does that work in the tournament? Like, big dudes get abused.
He is. I thought when I first saw him in like I think it was like November or December, I saw him and I was like, that's not a fucking real person. Is this? And I'm like this far from the screen. And like I remember like texting my buddy and I was like, is he like 8 feet tall? And he's like, he's 7'5". And I was like if you're that tall, you have to be a just dominant. Like,
Frankenstein, go take a seat. Memphis is going to beat you. So
Shooter McGavin actually had to hit a ball off his fat foot, and that was during the Big Ten tournament. So, no, I don't disagree with that. So I've got Arizona because I think they're playing really good basketball, and I don't like Connor used to give me shit about this all the time about making hedges. I've prided myself on making like the picks that I think are real and are going to win. This is the first time I'm openly admitting I'm making a hedge here. Like I just I've watched Bama play sports my whole life, and the thought of them making a Final Four is just so fucking bizarre to me that I can't.
But think of this team, what we've seen from this team. They night in and night out, they have been the better team like every game, even in a couple of the few. Like, here's the thing, Marler, their few losses were all on the road in hostile environments.
Yeah.
Now you're going to be playing in neutral courts. So to me, like, I don't know. The only way Bama loses is if they beat themselves, or if somebody goes off and like goes 13 for 20 from three, something like that. But Brandon Miller, I mean, he's been so good. Javon Quinterly, Clowney. I mean, they're the complete team. And if they've been able to play through this adversity the last few weeks with all the Brandon Miller drama and all that, like, I don't see what problem they're going to have in the tournament.
I will say, I think that somebody says Jay, I don't like, you need to come back every episode. Like, every episode, you've been fantastic. I appreciate it. And we appreciate all the audience and stuff like that each and every week, obviously. But no, I do think I just like JQ coming up like so big. And I know he played bad against in the semifinals against Mizzou or whatever. But I tell you what, that game against Mizzou in the SEC tournament where they did not have it going from three, they were 2 of 15 in the first half. I think, like, you get into foul trouble. I tell you what concerns me, because officiating in basketball especially is so bad. And I'm not going to sit here and start making excuses about the officials already. But like,
I hate Bama. You know it.
I'm not saying that Bama gets all the calls. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I just like, you just see him take over games and make it like, if think about Auburn's run in the Final Four, like, we don't know what could have happened then. Like, they probably should have beat the eventual national champion. Yeah. Anyway.
But you just talking about in the SEC championship or in the SEC tournament, Marler, they won every game by double digits. Like, it wasn't even close. As long as
the Mizzou game, especially, man, like that was more impressive, I think, than arguably any win they've had all year.
Yeah, to me, if Brandon Miller shows up, they're not going to lose a game. And there's a chance he may not show up because he may have to run a gun to somebody else. So we don't know if he has to run an errand. But as long as he shows up, they will not lose a game.
All right, there it is. All right. I'll tell you my Final Four real quick. I've got Arizona, you're a dickhead. Arizona, then I've got Duke. As much as I hate that, I've got, I think, Texas, I believe, is in one of mine. I'm trying to think, and now I'm confused because the way this thing's set up. Oh, and then I have Kansas. So kind of chalky, but also not super chalky.
How many 1 seeds?
One seed, Kansas, 2 seeds, and a 5 seed in Duke. I've got Arizona beating Kansas in the national championship. I didn't know this. Kansas would only be the 3rd team in the last 50 years that would be back-to-back champs in college basketball. That's how hard it is. And
that's why I think they're going to lose in one of the early rounds.
I hope they do. I hate Kansas.
Bill Self's having heart attacks. I mean, come on. Like, I can't roll with Kansas.
Yeah.
And by the way, are you doing the one bracket or are you multiple bracket guy?
I'm a multiple bracket guy. Here's the thing. Like, I don't portion control for me with food is not a real thing. I told you about my thought on drugs. This is like anytime I've ever taken edibles, people are like, dude, you don't eat the whole thing. I'm like, bro, look at me. I don't have portion control when it comes to real food. You can't put drugs in it expecting to be good. Same goes for college basketball brackets. I'm going to fuck it, man. I'll fill out 18 of them if I have to. I don't care.
Well, that's fine, but you don't get to brag. Like, tomorrow at the bar, you don't get to be the guy to go, oh, I had that one.
Right. No, I don't. And I won't.
You had that one in one of your 18 brackets.
But here's the thing. And I'll say this in football too. You know me well enough, and my just desperate need for attention. Everyone in here does, because they listen to the podcast or follow me on social media. If I pick something and it's correct, I'm not saying here, but I've been definitive about it, better give me my fucking credit, because that's all I want in this life. And maybe a corgi, I don't know. Anyway, Gordy, tell everyone where they can find you. You've been tremendous, dude. I appreciate the time and all that good stuff, man. Tell them about the Locked On SEC podcast. You can even tell them to make it their first listen, like you do on your show. I don't care.
It's part of our company protocol. But Locked On SEC, wherever you get your podcast. If you enjoyed this conversation with Marler, then check out my pod where we have a conversation with Marler about the same stuff. So it was really good.
All right, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone that tuned in. Like I said, we're going to go back to 2 of these a week. We're going to start doing these. We were going to record them live Monday and Wednesday. It means they'll come out live. They'll come out on all streaming platforms on Tuesday and Thursday. We're going to continue that. That's just how it's going to be from now on. So,
Tyler going to be back soon?
Tyler, well, yeah. So he's just it's just a busy time of year for him, and so he's got like stuff like he'll be here like every Monday. We might have a rotating guest host on some of them. Like I'll probably, I mean, you'll be back. I'll just tell you right now, you'll be back. But yeah, I mean, you're like my cigarette, so I can't quit you anyway. So I think that this will be a lot of fun. This weekend should be a lot of fun. I hope everyone gamble responsibly. Tell us about your wins. And listen, call the hotline. We'll throw up the number again on Twitter. If you took a tough beat, if you had all your money and your bracket got busted day one, call the hotline. Tell us all about it. We love you guys. We'll see you soon.